Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and there has just been a press conference about the Menendez brothers and should they be released from prison or should they be resentenced? And we heard from, and let me tell you his name, Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman, and he does a pretty long coverage of the Menendez brothers' history, their legal history, their criminal history, and then he talks about the different options that are available to possibly help them come back into normal life and leave prison. I really liked his presentation. I've linked it below. There's 50 minutes, but not all. Some of that is questioning. But listen to that, because one of the things he does is he goes through what actually is true about their history. And there's a lot of people out here just like, oh, the poor Menendez brothers, they were sexually abused and they just couldn't help themselves. And he goes through the history of what they actually claimed as to why they killed their parents. And they were in fear of their life. Never was about sexual anything. And the things they did, he goes into all the lies they told, all the people they asked to lie for them. It's unbelievable in the sense that when you hear it all packaged together, you realize what kind of guys they are. All right, they committed an absolutely horrific, brutal crime, a premeditated murders of their parents, and in such a brutal way. And while they were doing it, they seemed to get really into it, shall we say? In other words, their claim that they were in fear of their lives. Well, if they were in fear of their lives, why go there at all? Just go someplace else. They were adults, but they were in fear of their lives. Yet they committed a crime in the murder of two people that didn't exhibit the kind of behaviors you would see from someone who was frightened. What you saw was behaviors of two people who, in my opinion, exhibit psychopathy. They planned these murders. They set up alibis. They did all of this. They came in with the shotgun and they blew them away, their parents. And when mommy didn't die right away, they went back out, reloaded, came back in, and they had no problem blasting her face apart. That is not the behavior of people who are just scared. They would probably do the most minimal thing they could do to eliminate what was giving them that terror. But as he points out very well, they were trying to make it look like a mob hit. So they were doing things that they thought, if a mob came, somebody from the mafia came in and killed two people, what would they do? They tried to make it look gruesome and brutal in order to get away with the crime. But in doing so, it shows me that they had the kind of mindset that didn't have a problem doing what they did to two people who raised them. Hey, maybe their parents weren't perfect. Maybe they even hated their parents. But still, to be able to do that shows a certain kind of mentality. And this is what he brings up. And then he brings up the fact that, I won't go into everything he brought up, but when they're going through trial 1 and trial 2, whatever, and the things their defense team and they worked on, changing stories and all of that, and how they tried to manipulate everyone, showed what kind of people they were and why they should be in prison for the rest of their lives. Now, after he goes into that, he also talks about something else. I think he actually talks about it first, is the 3 main things a person needs to do who's been in prison, who's committed a horrific crime of murder. What 3 things they need to prove to be able to walk free in some form. One, that while they've been in prison, they weren't bad boys. These 2. You weren't a bad person while you're in prison. In other words, while you were there, you were not raping people, killing people, causing trouble. You didn't have all these incidents listed against you, which showed you are a violent person and you're never going to change. So if we let you out oh my God, what will you do? So that's the first one. The second one is, have you done some kind of rehabilitation of yourself, education while you're in prison? To show that you're trying to be a better person. Okay. And the third one is, have you accepted what you did was wrong? Are you willing to confess essentially to everything that you did, to be truthful about everything you did, accept responsibility, and have remorse? These are the three basic things that when you go before a parole board or plead your case before a judge or whatever, these three things should be in the positive zone. And therefore, somebody might look at that, the parole board might look at you and say, well, you have done most of your time, or you've done your time, or whatever. And we see that you seem to be a different person now. You seem to be safe to go out into society. You seem to understand that what you did was horrifically wrong. And now that, you've dealt with that emotionally and intellectually, and you know that what you did was against society and against morals. And therefore, now you can face the world and be a good person and not, reoffend. All right. So he brings up Sirhan as an example before he goes to them. And what he says is Sirhan, who killed Bobby Kennedy, assassinated Bobby Kennedy, went to, how many? I'm looking here, 16 appearances before a parole board. That's a lot. 2021, they recommended that he may, he hasn't caused problems in prison. He's got some associate's degree. So, hey, let the guy who's in his late 70s. But it says down here, in 2022, California Governor Gavin Newsom denied Sirhan's last bid for parole. Newsom wrote an op-ed in the Los Angeles Times stating that even though the state parole board had recommended Sirhan for parole, the severity of the crime, well, assassination is really, my opinion, if you go to assassinate the people, high people in the government of the country, you probably should never get out again. But so that's a big, huge issue, because then sets a precedent for, I should come out and kill the president, because why not? At some point they'll forgive me. When people start forgetting, if you've been in prison long enough, the newer generation won't remember anything or really care as much. So that's what you always hope for. Even with the Menendez brothers, if you're younger, you don't even really understand what all of that was about. So it seems like, they've been in prison a long time. Let them out. So he says here, even though they had recommended Sirhan for parole, the severity of the crime and Sirhan's, quote, current refusal to accept responsibility for it led to him denying the request. Okay, so that's the third one, the refusal to accept responsibility. And he goes heavy into that. Okay, let's go back to the first one, for the Menendez brothers. They actually haven't been so good in prison. They've had a lot of write-ups. They're not there, before they even shot their parents, they had criminal records. They were little thieves. They were burglars. So this goes, in my opinion, this shows what kind of mentality they had, personality disorder they had even when they were in teens. Now, whether the parents contributed to that, that's a whole nother case. You can always go back to parents. The way parents raise children could cause their children to be psychopaths. It's true. But anyway, they weren't so great back then. They had some issues when they're in prison. But not so bad. Okay. Then you go to the second one. Did they improve themselves? Well, apparently, yes. One of them got an associate's degree. The other one's got a bachelor's degree. So they did some educating. Well, first of all, these guys had the best education ever before they shot their parents. They had really good schooling. They're not stupid. They're highly educated boys before they went to prison. And you're sitting in prison for a few decades, Sirhan for 5 decades. You got to pass the time somehow. It drives me crazy when people say, "Oh, look, but now that person they're painting beautiful pictures." The serial killer, a lot of serial killers get into art for whatever reasons, paint beautiful pictures. Well, they should have done that when they're on the outside, but they didn't. They were busy killing people. But now they make beautiful pictures. They write wonderful books. They finish school. Well, You got nothing else to do. What you gonna do? So, I mean, it's like they're bored. Being bored is not some kind of you should be getting some kind of for being bored. So they do stuff to educate themselves. Okay, fine, wonderful. They do some prison things like help other people. Now, mind you, there are some people in prison who are pretty scummy and never and are violent and don't have any interest in education or helping others. They're just brutal. They're just brutal. And so that's pretty obvious. But then there's others. And these are the kind that probably not, attached to gangs and cartels and things. These are probably people that did situational crimes like them. Would they kill again if they were out? If they hadn't gotten arrested for killing their parents, would they have gone on and killed other people? Probably not. Although there is a guy named Peterson who seems to have killed two of his wives. Uh, and that they were both situational. It's like, I think he even tried to kill the first one, but the second one is like, well, she got on my nerves, so she ended up dead in a bathtub. And the third one, well, we don't know what happened to Stacy. So, he's not a serial killer, but he's a situational killer when women get on his nerves. Joran van der Sloot, in my opinion, is a violent date rapist. When he didn't get his way with Natalie on the beach, I think he ends up smothering her in the sand. He killed her. And the same thing happened with the next girl. Is he a serial killer? No. But he's dangerous in the sense that he has difficulties when things don't go his way. So these two, would they have gone on in life and they had money and maybe done something reasonable, had a restaurant, done sports, maybe gone back to school? Maybe. Or maybe they are situational killers and some woman who hooks up with them or some business partner ends up dead because, just like with the parents, hey, when these we don't get what we want from these people, take them out. So situational killers may go through life without doing it again, but then again, to do it the first time exhibits psychopathy and violence. So who knows whether it'll happen again, maybe 10 years later. But are they safe in society? I'd say no. You can hope they are, but you're never going to really know. All right. So they did nice things in prison. And also serial killers, by the way, they're usually really good in prison because they're usually kind of wimpy in the sense that they get their thrills killing, maybe raping, killing, whatever they're doing to people who are easy to take out. They're not going to go try to take out somebody that's going to fight them. They'll, hit them over the head from the back. They will, pick a 110-pound woman jogging along. You could be David Berkowitz and just shoot them from a distance, So they're not really like in the ring. They're not MMA fighters. So when they get to prison, they're like, let me make friends with all the guards, which is what they usually do. And they can be very easy to get along with and never do anything wrong in prison. But if you let them out and they have the chance to go back to serial homicide, will they? Maybe not because they're older or whatever, and they're afraid they're going to go back to prison so they don't do it again. But can you promise that? No, I don't care how much education they got and whether they make pretty pictures. To me, that proves nothing. All right, let's go to number 3. Number 3 is the one again. Let me read from Newsom about Sirhan. His current refusal to accept responsibility for his crimes. Now, our district attorney here is basically saying these guys have never accepted responsibility for their crimes. They have continued to lie, change their stories, manipulate, lie, change their stories. He says they've never done that. So he says at this point, we don't see number 3 working out. However, he does say this: one pathway for these two guys is if they do come forward and finally admit what they did, admit the real motive, which is, in my opinion, and probably his opinion, they're tired of the controlling dad. They took mom out because, well, they might as well get rid of her too, because she was there as a witness. And they wanted the parents' money, and he goes through how much work they did to make sure they got the money. They wanted their inheritance, and they didn't want to get cut out of a will. They wanted money, and they wanted to get rid of the controlling parents. Now this is what he's saying they have to admit to. They have to say, hey, it wasn't about, we really weren't afraid for our lives. That was ridiculous. We made that crap up. And yeah, even though we said there was some sexual stuff, that really wasn't why we did it. We did it because we're psychopaths. I don't know if they're going to say that we did it because we're psychopaths, and we wanted money and freedom. Okay, but is that what he wants them to say? But here's the thing: there's two possibilities. He's saying this is the way that they can. Number three, they can do it if they just confess. That's who we were. That's why we did it. We lied all over the place. All this stuff. We've done all these things, these manipulative things. So now that we've confessed and straightened it all up, and we've taken responsibility, let us out. What actually are they saying? What they're saying is, for years, we have done things in a psychopathic manner. We couldn't be trusted because we are liars and manipulators, and we throw anybody under the bus, and we'll even kill them brutally if we don't get our way. But now that we're willing to admit that we do these things, why don't you let us out? So basically, if they're confessing to be the exact kind of people we do not want on the outside of prison, we should let them out. That's an interesting concept. I don't get it. For one thing, there's two possibilities. Sometimes a person who, I'm not saying they're psychopaths, but let's say a person is a psychopath, a serial killer, whatever. There are times like Sirhan, they will not confess to their crime ever. Why? Because they don't want people to know the truth, the secret. They want to continue to manipulate people. It pisses them off to have to tell them the truth. So they won't do it no matter what. And sometimes it's also to keep relatives, like they got relatives who seem to think they're okay guys now. If they actually confess to the truth, all the relatives may dump them. So they may not want to risk that because they want to keep their lies going. They want people to continue to believe whatever they put out there. So sometimes a psychopath will never tell the truth. And won't confess to these kind of things. Sirhan didn't to the end, and so he didn't get parole. But then again, if they do confess to these things, does that mean that they're the kind of people you want on the outside? It doesn't mean they've really learned their lesson, that they've really changed, that they now have morals. No, it just means they want something. They want to get something. If they believe, and the defense attorney tells them, if you confess to A, B, C, D, and E, you will get out of here. Then some psychopaths will go ahead and confess to those things. And then they'll go play a new game on the outside when they get there. So either way, not confessing or confessing, I don't think it makes any difference because they're still the same person no matter what. And should they be on the outside? And if they're violent psychopaths, the answer to that is no. And then we have to look at the severity of the crime as well. A person who commits this kind of a crime is just a person who should be free. Because when they talk about rehabilitating, are they rehabilitated? Well, I'd like to know if their parents are rehabilitated because they're dead. Sirhan, are you rehabilitated? I don't know, but is Bobby Kennedy rehabilitated? Pretty much not. Dead people don't get rehabilitated. They don't get to come back to life. So we're worried about criminals who commit those murders, taking away other people's lives. Can we bring them back to life? Well, that's nice. And our country does not have, since we're very, many are against the death penalty, but not only are people against the death penalty, but it also doesn't get enacted very quickly. So one of the issues we have in this country, I'm not saying whether it should be for or against it, but in some countries, when you commit like an assassination of a head of state or somebody running for whatever office and stuff like that, when you do that, You get executed. Sometimes you get executed within the year. They're not pussyfooting around with this crap. We're not going to say, okay, let's let you have 16 appeals. No, you did a crime which we absolutely know you committed. You're done. We take you down to the square and we hang you, or we shoot you. We do something to you, but it's over. But so you never have to worry about that killer getting out there again. But we have situations like this where there's no question they did it, absolutely zero question. They were not executed within a year. They're still here 3 decades later, still making friends, getting Netflix documentaries made, still trying to get out one way or the other. And so now we're stuck trying to figure out whether in their 50s. Now, Sirhan, I think he said he was 77 at the time of that parole. I mean, that guy is probably not a danger to the community. Although, if you remember a guy named Ed Fish, I can't remember how old Ed Fish, I think his name was Ed Fish. Many, many years ago, they let him, he was quite older, shall we say, almost elderly. And he killed 8 little children. So, maybe age is not going to stop you from doing things. So they're only in their 50s. They got strength. They can go out in society and do all kinds of things for a few decades. And if they had been executed within the first year, we wouldn't have this conversation. But no, they've been there for years, and this is blown up into a huge thing. And so we're all supposed to sit here and try to figure out, are they changed? Are they good guys now? And if they confess to that they did all these horrible things, they confess to every check mark on a psychopathy checklist, including brutal murder, cover up, lies, everything else. Should we just accept now that they're different people? And would never do it again. So let's let them have a life. I don't have an answer for this. I'm just pointing out this is where we're at when we have a legal system that never comes to a conclusion, where it goes on and on and on. And the amount of money, mega amount of money spent with these continuous attempts to get people out of prison one way or the other, with the Innocence Project and these new prosecutor these new prosecutors who can go back to a case that was the person's already in prison, gone through jury trial, they're in prison for life, and the new prosecutor comes in and lets them go. Judges let them go. I mean, because one person now can decide, hey, let's let them go. I mean, so our system is a little bit screwed up, and we have again so many ways, so many opportunities, so many layers of opportunities to allow people who are in prison to try once again to get out of their sentence. And you can argue below in the comments of which way you think it should go and how many chances we think a person should have. But I'll just leave this with you. If they do get out because they confess to being the bad boys when they were the bad boys, and they fess up to literally to everything. He wants them to fess up to every single thing they did. If they do that, do you trust that they're changed people and will be perfectly fine on the outside? So anyway, those are my thoughts on this. New to the channel, please do like and subscribe, and let's see what happens. I personally would like them to stay where they are. Bye-bye.